For the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. I do believe the agenda is as it was originally planned. Eileen, do you have anything to say to start out? Or?
Again, congratulations to Tim and his team for all the good work that he has done during the year and in past years. We're very lucky to have him, even though his staff keeps turning over and over, and I don't know what he's doing to them. But we get really good people in, and they, do their training basically here, and then they move along. But we've got some really good replacements, and people come along quickly. So there's not a lot in this budget, more I should say, except for a new vehicle to replace the fleet vehicle that was, what year? 2007 former police cruiser, Crown Vic, and it has about 110,000 miles on it. And the idea is normally we would keep switching these cars around and that kind of thing, but the lifespan of some of these cars, and everybody needs them. So DPW needs them as vehicles for their staff, and then fire department needs them for their staff, and then we need them for our staff. So we have interns in the summer that do. Kyle needs them, and we have engineering staff that do a lot of work on the road, and it's about time, really, that we get a new vehicle for here. Obviously, it's going to last for a very long time, and you won't be seeing one in here for a long time. So that's really all I have to say about this budget, and the fabulous Tim Thompson.
Fabulous. Okay, we're doing library. We're doing library first.
I thought we were too. I was going to ask.
Never mind.
Just hold that thought, right?
Skip all that nice stuff. We're on library, or we need to go?
I'm not doing it again.
We've got the introduction that we won't have to hear.
Do you want to say anything about the library?
No,
What
I
you
don't.
want-
Except very impressed by the library. As we all have said, the library has advanced beyond all of our expectations in the last 4 or 5 years with all the programs, all the things that they're doing to attract a wide variety of ages, even teens,
You
which
can
is
be
a very
coming down to that while
which is a
she's
very
speaking of
Hey,
glories.
could I speak? Speak? So, and the other thing is that they're improving technology to a great extent, and making the library a more relevant place than it has been in a very long time. So with that, the fabulous Yvette Kauser
And Rick Barnes,
Rick Barnes,
who's on the
also
Board of
fabulous.
Trustees, right?
Yes, I'm the current chair. Yes.
Welcome, both of you.
Thanks.
In fact, you've got a book sale coming up soon, right?
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Madam Chair.
I know. Timing is everything.
Yes, we have our midwinter book sale this weekend. We always wait until the big games are over. We don't schedule them to conflict
Smart.
with any big games.
Yeah, but not next weekend. So
No,
we're
it's this
clear.
weekend. This weekend.
coming weekend,
So
Right, but
on-
there's nothing this coming weekend.
Right.
no big games.
Right.
Just book sale.
Perfect. With that introduction, go right ahead. Let's tab number 15, everyone.
So I just want to, before we've introduced Rick Barnes, who's our chair, Yvette Kauser, the library director. We do have some representatives here that I'd like to just point out here. Janice Tibbetts is our trustee alternate. If you could give a little wave.
Hi.
And then Jennifer Green is our head of circulation. She also holds the acting director rider. If God forbid something happens to me, she's your girl. Or woman. I think I'm supposed to say woman. So basically, I think when we were before you in November, we talked a little bit about what we've been up to this past year. The main thing that happened this year was that the trustees accepted our strategic plan, and now we're kind of officially able to make decisions based on the strategic plan and the direction that we determined we needed to go based on a bunch of research. So we also had some staff turnover, and I think with several new department heads in place, I don't think we wanted to make a lot of changes to the budget. I would like the department heads to assess their budget levels. We're in the middle of a big weed of the collection, an assessment of the collection. We're looking at statistics and how we can collect statistics that really tell a story of what's happening at the library. It seems like in the past our statistics have been kind of not stagnant, it's not the right word, static, and really don't tell us what's happening with the collection. So that's something, so when you look at our budget, there's not a lot of changes. And that's the reason behind it, because we're really trying to analyze what are we doing and where are we spending our money. There are a couple of things that we can bring to your attention. You want me to just go?
Yeah, go for it.
Go
'cause
for it.
My head's still pounding. So.
He has.
It's a man
He's,
of few
he's
words.
claiming headache. So
I got
I'm
a
just
migraine like you wouldn't believe.
He's claiming headache. Okay, so as far as our calculations, the total difference between last year's budget and this year's budget is $55,528. In personnel, we made a couple of adjustments, or the trustees voted on a couple of adjustments for certain salaries based on the wage and classification study that was done a couple years ago. We also had, as I said, some staff turnover, so that changed a little bit when we had new staff coming in at a slightly lower rate of pay. With some of these savings, which included 2 retirements, we were able to combine some positions. We combined one position, or I guess we combined a couple of positions to create one full-time position. And then, some of these are adjustments with hours. So there's not a lot of changes in personnel. The custodial line reflects the actual. So that was something we wanted to make a correction on. I'm jumping through all of the other personnel lines. Paul always populates those numbers for retirement and insurance and workers' comp and so on, so we don't touch those. And then when you get down to office supplies and
Which is
crafts.
8201, just to let everybody know.
Yes,
Yep.
8201 is where I'm looking. That was an increase to reflect what we're actually spending. We're trying to compare our invoices with what we need for next year rather than kind of stealing from Peter to pay Paul. Not this Paul, of course.
Oh, that Peter.
Okay, and then just going through the building things, sewer, telephone, our membership dues and fees, general insurance, that's a number that Paul puts in. Not a lot of changes for any of these lines. We changed some of the totals under 8321 maintenance buildings. That's another one to reflect actual. Just keep going. In computer services, which is 8353, this is where you see our consortium dues. Those always go up a little bit. And then we also planned to increase in our internet services. We came across a problem this year where the internet that's throughout the building, the public internet that's throughout the building really isn't strong enough. And we've tried to add different, Wi-Fi extensions and stuff, but we really need to change the actual contract that we have with Comcast. I went back and talked to the GMILK staff, and they said we were still on the business starter pack, which is just not strong enough for for what's happening. What we're seeing is basically everyone comes into the library with a phone.
Yeah.
That's wireless. So that's already taking up some bandwidth, and
And laptops.
laptops,
iPads,
tablets, you name it.
Yep.
So that's something that we are planning to increase.
By strength, you're talking bandwidth, not security.
No, I'm talking bandwidth. The
Okay.
speed is
All right.
pretty bad. So,
Tom?
Problem is,
Yeah, I
once,
have something
with
too.
your phone, once you get onto the network, as soon as you walk back into the building, your phone auto connects.
yeah.
You're eating
Well, I
up
understand. I
bandwidth
just was
and-
trying to figure out what strength of the network
Yeah.
meant.
No,
Because
it's the speed.
to a lot of people, it's security,
Yeah, good
to
point.
avoid, people hacking in or doing something like that. I got the impression it was bandwidth, but I wanted to
Yeah.
make sure. Thank you.
Tom,
Okay.
you had a question?
So just real quick, under computer services and supplies, so that's dues and internet, that's where the internet is under as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And now so how much of because you have an increase, variant of 6292, so $6,200, but how much is that dues and how much is that gonna be internet, and what else is in that?
Well, the thing that says GMILK's consortium plus CBC plus automation, that's our consortium dues, and that it encompasses everything that allows us to be in the consortium. So that's our catalog and that database. and all
Do you
of those
need an
things.
explanation of the consortium, Tom?
Yep, we need that
Because,
too.
yeah, because he doesn't, he's new. We've been educated.
You gotta hold my hand.
No, but I think it's important for him to
I'll
understand.
hold your hand from
Because
afar.
that's a significant amount of money.
It
And he needs
is.
to be able to understand what it's
It's
for.
worth every penny. We're very fortunate in southern New Hampshire here in Merrimack to be part of a group of 12 libraries. And so with your library card, you can borrow things from Bedford, Manchester, Goffstown, Hooksett, 2 academic libraries, the Nesmith Library down in Wyndham, it's Salem, the Kelly Library in Salem. It's very powerful. So if, you don't find something on my shelf that you want, you can request it from another library. And we have a separate courier van that just delivers within the consortium. We operate with 2 vans. We have the state library van that will deliver from all the other libraries in New Hampshire, and then the consortium really wanted to provide excellent customer service, so we started to buy in together with a separate courier. And we receive deliveries every day, give or take. That's what the consortium is.
Actually, I got one more question.
Go right ahead.
There was something in here, it was on the front page, so bear with me for a second.
That's okay.
Incentive pay library, 8143. What is that? Because you had 200,
Yep.
then it went to 15 was the proposed, but then it goes to 0. So what is that? Just
So-
that line item?
So that's something that if we have staff who really perform
Yeah.
above and beyond, then I would have the authority with checking with the trustees, because we set up some different dollar amounts to reward the staff for performing above and beyond. This was something, it was a model that the town has, so we were trying to follow that.
Okay. I'm just, because you had 200, go ahead, sorry.
No, that's okay. But that's a one-time
Oh, yeah.
bonus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll sit down.
Yes.
Anybody else? Peter?
Anything else?
Yeah, I was looking at the seminars and conferences. I was looking at 8,300 travel and meetings,
Yep.
and it totals $6,000. I guess I'm curious what meetings and seminars the staff or yourself would be attending.
That could be anything from a consortium meeting, so, mileage, or state conferences, regional conferences, or the American Library Association conference, which is usually out of state.
Right, so the last 2, the regional and the other one you just mentioned, those are out of state?
The regional one is anywhere in New England, so it's the New England Library Association, and then the New Hampshire Library Association has a state conference,
Okay.
and then the American Library Association has a conference. We don't send staff to the big ones every year. I went to ALA 2 years ago. I am going to send my tech services head to Computers and Libraries, which is in Washington, D.C., and I think I went to that one several years ago. So it's kind of, I mean, they're really wonderful conferences. You kind of can, like a traditional conference, it's specific to your field, and you can learn about a lot of the up-and-coming technology, services, best practices, hear speakers, and really it's an incredible learning experience. So I think it's good to send the staff to the big conferences, but I think the information you bring back really lasts for a long time.
Okay.
And then what I've told them is, let's implement what we're learning. And when we feel like we've exhausted that knowledge, then really consider who's going to go to the next big conference.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yvette, can you talk to me, same page 101, 8280 under general insurance? Got roughly about a $2,500 drop.
That's me.
Bill.
Basically, what I do is we get our property and liability from Primex. They give us our rate. I go through and I portion it out based on salaries, based on personnel, based on a number of factors. And this year, Yvette got the lucky straw, and hers is going down. As you saw with Highway Department, they didn't get the lucky straws, and theirs went up due to the factors that you go through.
Probably usage.
Usage, too.
Employees, yeah.
It's 'cause we have a
All
healthy
set?
staff.
Another,
Oh, another one, okay.
another
go
one,
ahead.
please, thank you.
We'll go
On
with
I don't know about that.
page 104, under the capital reserve.
We
can you
haven't
talk-
gotten there yet,
You haven't gotten there yet.
right. Because we... Huh? Well, she hasn't gone beyond computer services. I wanted her to finish up to now.
I'm trying to find out, where did we leave off?
Okay.
We left off at computer services.
I was on 7. Okay.
Not sure whether this is the proper venue to do this, but I wonder what your security is now like about people using the internet in your library, because I don't know if it was a year ago or a year and a half ago, there was some pretty rough things that people were looking at in your library, and it brought people of national concern to us. So I'm wondering if you have changed your philosophy where people can, there's no, there's no limits as to what people can access your internet
What's
for.
your policies?
What's your
We don't
filter?
censor anything.
I'm sorry?
We do not censor the internet. In terms of your personal information that is connected to your library card, that's incredibly safe. And it's separate from the public internet. So it's behind firewalls.
But that's not what you're
I
talking
could not
about.
explain.
No,
But,
that's not what I'm talking about.
yeah.
I'm talking about when the people from the federal government came down here to find out who was accessing a particular file website. And I just wondered if there was anything that came out of that you took any actions of any kind, or you just feel that,
I don't know if I remember the exact situation
oh,
you're
really?
talking about.
I remember it very well.
Okay, because I mean, we don't censor our internet, and we have a pretty standard policy about, people are responsible for what they look at. If you're looking at something that's inappropriate, you're going to be asked to please turn that off. So what I usually see more frequently, which I don't want you to mistake the word frequently because it's not frequent, is pictures, images of people. So, which is not appropriate to look at in a public space. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
This was not people. This was really, really bad. So, as vile as you could possibly imagine. So, I'm just wondering if you said there's no filter, and then you said that people can, if something's not appropriate, you tell them to stop, then that's a filter. So I'm just wondering, because, you know, we ended up getting involved, and I'm sure the police department got involved with that. Do you recall that, Peter? Do you,
I don't know what the outcome was of that.
no, but you knew the circumstances, right?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
aware of it, yeah. I think that my concern is,
It was a while ago.
yeah. it
We
was-
do have an internet usage policy that covers what people can and cannot do on the public computers, but there's no software specifically stopping somebody from doing something malicious, if that's
Mike-
what you mean.
My question is on that is, and I'm sure you guys have that policy, that makes great sense, but these sites, if somebody came in and wanted to download a pornography site or something, they come with viruses and everything else, and how do you protect yourself from that? I mean, if there's nothing blocking it, or did I miss something? Is there something blocking it?
We have software that blocks viruses.
Okay. Even if somebody goes to an improper site and violates the policy without your knowledge?
Yeah, I mean, the staff do a sweep of the building. We're not, it's not proper for us to spy on anybody and see what they're doing. You know, patrons should have the freedom to do whatever work they want to do on it.
Mm-hmm.
We ask that they keep it rated G. You know, because looking at a screen and seeing an image that might be pornographic, that's in an open space. And that's one of the reasons why we keep the computers in an open space, so that there's a little bit of a deterrent where,
Right.
what is my neighbor looking at? But I'm sorry, Eileen, I would have to, this is not really ringing any bells for me, so I'd have to get a little more information about dates for the incident you're talking about.
Yeah, I remember. Okay, it's probably worth a discussion offline.
Sure,
With the two of you.
sure.
Because I think it is something that, there are certainly sites that are illegal to go to.
Okay.
Is there any mechanism by which those are prevented to go to?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's-
part of
that's
the
the
problem
question.
is the filters,
I know that there are
For the-
filters you can purchase and you can really set the range,
right, but
the severity. Some can be really strict and some are just very loose. So I guess, but your filters you're talking about, I believe, my understanding is it's mostly for viruses, filtering that stuff out, not by site or category of site. Is that correct?
This is a little bit out of my depth, honestly.
But that's what we're talking about.
Sure, I
Yeah.
understand that.
The clearly illegal sites,
Mm-hmm.
there should be a mechanism where we should be able to filter out clearly illegal sites.
Yeah, that's a very good discussion that we certainly can have, you know, I think, with the staff and the trustees to find out what's appropriate.
But see, that's not appropriate. That's illegal.
What's appropriate for us to do? And
Gotcha.
how do we
As
go
far as
about
actions.
doing that?
How would you
Yeah.
do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I
That
know
would be
there are
good.
other communities that have software installed on their computers, and sometimes there's a conflict between a library whose mission is to provide access. And then when you start to set down barriers, it's
Yeah.
a very slippery slope.
Yes, it is.
And it's a conversation we have to have, knowing that it's a slippery slope.
Right. I
No.
understand.
Okay. But I'm willing to have
It is a slippery slope.
yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think, you know, and you get into moral judgments and stuff. But when
Yeah.
you get into illegal, it's
Right.
not a moral judgment. So
Sure.
that's the issue.
Okay, that's.
That'd be great if you could
I
get back.
can put on my to-do, absolutely.
Pete?
And I just would suggest, Yvette, maybe you already thought about it, but, I mean, obviously, we've got Chuck Miller here, our IT guy, but,
Mhm.
I mean, the technology committee has a number of
That's a
very
good idea.
qualified, experienced people that might be able to offer you some suggestions. And I know they're eager to help out.
Okay,
Really
Thank
good
you.
point. Paul, and then Tom.
You're using CEJ now for your IT?
yes, phones. We also have Dick Lambert who comes in for IT, yes.
Okay, so you,
So not check.
so you do use a local vendor to
Mhm.
on this, who's schooled in this as well, because we use him as well. So, just want to make that point there, using one of the vendors that we do use here too, and he understands.
Okay, so maybe talking. Tom?
So just a question on the computer services again, on the
Okay.
GMILCS, whatever. Right, so you have it down for 36,490. What was last year's budget on that?
Last year was 34,918.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't you continue from there, we can finish, and Bill, then you can have your question, okay?
Okay,
Go ahead and
thank you.
finish.
So there was one change in other outside services, 8359, which is something called Spot, that is allowing someone with a laptop to print wirelessly with our system of print release. It's kind of just a small addition that we hope people will appreciate. There were no changes in the funding for programs. Library materials, we did a lot of kind of internal shuffling around. We did discontinue Friegel Music in favor of Hoopla, which is a broader platform. It offers not only music, but you can download television shows and books, comic books. So it was just a broader platform that we were noticing that other libraries in our consortium had started to look at. They were getting a lot of good response from their communities for it, and we really wanted to spend the money in a more efficient way, I think.
Okay, one point with
Yeah.
Hoopla, because I absolutely love Hoopla. There's an app that you can put on your phone so you can get audiobooks and movies and everything right on your phone.
I think you talked about
I
that.
think I
You
did, because
always-
I love it. So I bring it up a lot.
I think your enthusiasm, reminded
Yeah.
me.
So, go ahead. I'm
Nice. Do you own stock in we increased the video game line for demand. Our collection was outdated, and the new staff who's managing that collection wanted to flip it and update it. And then also was watching trends and seeing what the demand is, but there is a lot of demand for checking out games.
Yeah, that was one of the things we talked about in our last trustee meeting. We looked at items being checked out versus how many we have in the collection, and video games was the percent being checked out versus what we have is, I don't remember the exact number, but it was
Really
one of the highest percentages for collection. So.
Yep. I'm gonna go, I don't have a lot of other changes, because it's just the other operating expenses, the buildings, office equipment, capital reserve. Usually when I submit my CIPs, I leave it to Paul's discretion to prioritize what our projects might be. Right now, we're still looking at trying to find a vendor to repair or reconfigure the windows in the children's rooms so that they won't be vulnerable to what seems to be an annual flood now
Oh, that's
in the
right.
summer. So that's, but I usually leave that up to Paul. So,
Bill, you want to ask your question now? And then Tom?
You saw an increase of $75,000, up from 35 from the last year. I'm just curious to know what, into the building maintenance fund, what your goals are going to be with that money.
for building maintenance?
That's correct, yes.
We're trying to make a lot of repairs. We're always overspent in that line. I didn't bring that building list, the building project list that we have.
Paul.
Yeah.
Paul?
They have a slate roof,
There you go.
sidewalk, drainage trench by the children's room.
That's that.
They also have, hold on, I gotta open up another file, but they have smaller things like the elevator, your sprinkler systems, stuff like that. Also, the, kind of like what we're doing with the space needs study for the fire and police and what we did with Highway Garage, they also have something similar for their new library, some kind of consultant to come in and sit down and talk to them about the new library. Hold on a sec, I got it right here.
Could you tell me where that was?
Oh, it's I'm sorry, 8510.
Granite Steps was another project.
Because it's in two places, it appears then. Bear with me, 8510.
Transfer to library building maintenance fund.
Yeah, no, the two big things we're planning are the slate roof repair and the windows in the children's room are the two biggest.
Right, and then you got the signs and reader boards. That would all come out of that fund.
Right.
Bill, are you done, first of all?
I am not.
Okay, good.
Follow up, Madam Chair?
Go
Thank you.
absolutely.
So, based on the allocation that you've presented to us tonight, is that going to be more than sufficient to cover the projects that we've talked about?
I'm not sure how you put it in, Paul. Yeah.
Most of these projects are happening as placeholders in the out years, 6 years, 2022, 23, 2023, 24. So that's why it got bumped up to $30,000 this year. We'll have to see next year some of the costs as we start dialing closer to it to see where the projects are and how much they're gonna cost. But, right now we feel that $75,000 is a good number, just like we do with all the other departments.
Eileen?
This is more in keeping with the capital reserve funds that we would like to be doing. So as Paul is explaining that there are a number of projects in over several years that need to be done, and so they're setting aside, we've kind of accumulated those over a certain period of time to see how much they cost, and then broken that down between, and it comes to $75,000 a year, which probably won't be spent, but it'll be saved. It won't be spent for a while.
And we're going to be attacking that trench near the children's room, because I know that was a problem last year, and I don't want to
There's no expenses.
impede kids being able to go downstairs and be able to look at books and meet other kids, and that's a very active part of the library, and I don't want to deny the kids the opportunity to go down there. I know they look forward to it. So we're going to be, if we approve this budget, we're going to be attacking that particular piece of the library?
No.
No.
Because this is putting money into capital reserve, so according to the CIP, it's not anticipated for that to happen until 2021.
So how much did we spend last year for ServPro or whomever to go in and clean out the basement?
$1,000 out of our pocket.
Will the insurance
The
continue
insurance-
to pay it?
This insurance will continue to pay it. We've asked that question. And we reconfigured this summer, the parking lot. So before we go hog wild on that trench, we want to see if our parking lot reconfiguration is actually working. And it appears to me that it has worked over the last 2 major rainstorms, that the flooding hasn't come in. Now, we have to look at it, and we have to sit down with Kyle, because is the water now on DW Highway being pushed back into that trench? And that's what we have to do, and so that's the next step. So Yvette will be getting back with Don and Kyle to see what the next steps are.
And we also repaved the parking lot as a consequence of that reconfiguration, correct?
Correct, because
Okay.
when they were doing the repaving, we decided to reconfigure it.
Okay.
How much is in the capital reserve funds now?
Good question, I'll give you an answer in a sec. They have around $42,000, a little more than $42,000. So when the 75 gets added, they'll have over 117.
Bill, you all set?
I'm not done, but I'll yield to Councilor Albert.
I guess just on a curiosity note, I'm listening about the windows in that trench, and I always thought that was a poor design anyways. Are they considering closing off those windows and filling that trench in?
We've had a hard time finding a vendor who is willing to talk to us about such a small job. So, we're still looking and trying to find someone. But I think it's either you block them up or you bring it to half, so the water level isn't at the window. But I'm struggling with the vendor to come in,
Paul, you wanted to say something?
Yes, we're trying to leverage our project that we're going to be doing over in the other town hall with our window replacement. When we do that and get our vendor, we're hoping that once we get our vendor, we can
Sure.
ship him over to a vet and have him, kind of economies of scale at that time, see what they can do over there. But we have to get our vendor first, which we're going out to bid probably beginning of February for that project.
And so lastly, did I hear you correctly, Paul, that we're allocating monies to engage in a consultant for a new library? Did I hear that correctly?
That is what was requested in the CIP, and it looks like that's going to be in 1920. There was some talk about
1920, that's
yeah.
about 90 years ago.
2019, 2020.
You said 1920.
I understand what I said.
2019.
Oh, 19-20, duh, I'm sorry. Now I feel like an ass.
Bill,
okay.
I took it the same way you did,
Okay.
so it wasn't just you.
No, sometimes
I just went-
sometimes as accounting speak is like engineer speak. But
Oh!
2019, 2020, and basically the library is looking to do something similar, and what they wrote on their backup for the new library was to do something similar, a library evaluation, which is the staff trustees will look at to hire an outside firm to evaluate the space needs and may include renovations, additional, or new building construction.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, Tom, did you have a question? And
Yeah,
then
I did, more of a
Finley?
comment, I think. So, I mean, I'm looking under library materials, and, you have online resources and databases, you have adult fiction. It'd be nice knowing the actuals for last year, what was spent with those big ticket items, just for the future. Just because, it's quite a bit of money.
On my copy, I have my changes in red. So we didn't change any numbers until you get down to overdrive. That changed.
Okay.
Hoopla changed, and that was more of adding money to it, and
Okay.
there's a little bit of combining with overdrive. The video games increased, and the audio books and video actually isn't a real change. It's separating them out, because in last year's budget, we called them audio/video materials, and it was unclear to the staff what that was.
Okay.
So the staff wanted to break out audiobooks and videos,
Okay.
which is probably, I should say, those are actually probably DVDs. not videos.
So online resources and databases, didn't change from last year?
Not the totals, no.
No, okay.
You all set, Tom?
Yep.
Give it Finley first, did you want to? No, you're all set, Bill?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Just an editorial comment to you, Yvette, and to you, Rick, as the leaders over at the library. When you engage, or if you engage your consultant, and you begin to look at your needs, the two things that I would ask you to do
Mhm.
is to include the Town Center Committee, because they had talked about closing Church Street in terms of sidewalk accessibility. And now, mind you, it's conceptual, it's big, it's a lot, there's a lot of pieces involved with that. But the other problem that I think we as a council we haven't really grasped, but I know I can comfortably say we've talked about it, is the lack of adequate parking in the downtown, or access to parking. So what I would encourage you to do is to look at the entire location of the library in relation to Church Street, in relation to the O'Leary Center, and to begin to put some thought as to what, if it can be done, or what can be reasonably done, as it relates to additional parking, whether it be, and I hate to talk deck parking, but, you've got the slopage there. I mean, it's a significant engineering job, but when you're going through that, if and when you go through that process, if you can include that on your list of things to look at in terms of looking at your needs assessment for spacing at the library, I think there would be a lot of value, not just to the library. I think there'd be some value here
Okay,
on the town side,
okay.
just to see what the potential would be.
One point with that, part of what's going on right now is you could add to this any way you want, is the staff is kind of evaluating requests for the library and things. So, you know, when they see there's parking problems, like we're going to see this coming weekend at the book sale, people always come in complaining about the book parking for the book sale. When they complain about there's no private meeting rooms, these are all things that we're kind of compiling a list. So when we do bring in a consultant, we'll actually have a list of these are the things that we know patrons want. Is there any way to get how do we get what patrons actually want for the library? So.
I know that a long time ago, I know the Exeter Public Library went through a similar thing, and when they were building up, they actually built deck parking, built out, and have an interesting configuration to get in and out of the library.
Right.
But you know, when you're local, it works for them. They know how it works. So that's all.
Okay.
Thank you,
Tom and
Mitchell.
then Jackie.
Yeah, this one's actually for Paul probably, because this department, health insurance went down. And their cost per person of health insurance is less than other departments. I was wondering if you could help me understand.
The library is actually, health insurance is done separately through the health trust. They are on a small, because they have their own board of trustees, they're allowed to break away from the town's plan. And they go into a larger group, because they go in a group that, what is it, less than 50?
It's under 50.
Under 50 employees. They get to go with that group, but it's a larger number of people in there, so they get a better rate than us. We cannot join that because we're over the 50 employee mark. So they're on a separate health insurance plan, and those are their rates.
Okay.
And they can move back and forth as the wind changes. So if our rates start going down, then they can move back over to us, and et cetera, et cetera. And we wish we could parcel everybody off, but they've caught on to that game, so we can't do it.
Unless
But
they
the
have their own
library
board of
definitely can,
trustees.
because they have their own board.
And yet their disability insurance went up. Is that still separate, or?
Nope, they're with us on disability. They can, the only health insurance and dental are the two that they're on their own with, on their own, but everything else has to come through the town.
Okay, thank you.
Is that Jackie?
Yes, I wanted to add to what Bill Boyd said about the parking. The Town Center Committee had an extensive conversation about closing Church Street, and had thought that it would augment parking, and there were ways to cut into the hill, for example, and possibly adding deck. But we were turned down because of the loss of an exit that I would imagine the fire department thought was crucial. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't be revisited.
Anyone else? Seeing none. No more questions? Okay, I think you,
Jackie's hand, your hand go up, Jackie?
No, she said.
all set.
Okay.
You want to talk some more, Rick?
No. I'm gonna go home and take Advil.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
hoopla, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yvette, thank you, Rick, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is going to be community development, tab number 21. And we've already had an introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the council. I will be brief as I usually am. Overall, if you look at my budget compared to last year, you'll see an increase of $13,109, increase about 2.6%. However, if you take out the capital expenditures, which are the one-time expense for a vehicle for my department and the GIS Capital Reserve Fund deposit, my department actually went down $6,891, or 1.4%. It's essentially a level-funded budget, as I've tried to do for most of the years that I've been employed by the town. The primary increase, as I mentioned, is the vehicle. My department has depended on the reuse of former police cruisers over the course of the 6 years I've been here. The most recent vehicle we had, as Eileen had mentioned, was a 2007 vintage vehicle that stopped wanting to go forward. Would only go backwards, regardless of what gear
And that's
it was
a
placed
problem?
in, and that is a bit of a
Really?
problem.
I mean, this is Merrimack.
Since that time, we were able to borrow a vehicle from the fire and building department until such time that Fred Kelly needed his car back. And we are now utilizing the vehicle that the Public Works interns use during the summer. So my department has been without our own dedicated vehicle probably for a good 9 to 10 months at this point. I believe I made the request to Paul to look into what we could do for the department. We do have relatively fair amount of vehicle needs. We do a lot of site inspections, site visits, following up on code enforcement requests, as well as we use the vehicle for travel to and from meetings and workshops and things of that nature. But we do use the vehicle probably not as often as most departments do, but it is a pretty regular use within the department, given the demands, particularly when development is going during the spring and summer months. That's really the prime time where we're out doing a lot of inspections of sites that have been gone through the review process. Outside of that, really the only changes you'll notice here and there throughout the budget are because I made the mistake of saying I was happy that I had no staff turnover last year. Of course, I had staff turnover this year.
You just cursed yourself.
Of course I cursed myself. I didn't knock on wood. I didn't do all those types of things. So in the course of the last year, we lost our part-time secretary to private sector position, and we lost our planning and zoning administrator, Jillian Harris, to the city of Portsmouth. Following those two changes, I've hired Sharon Haynes, who's a local resident who has a young child and is looking only at part-time development, part-time position, is not interested in a full-time position anytime in the next several years. So she is set up well and has told me that she has no desire at this stage to be looking for any full-time employment. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to retain Sharon for some time.
Yeah.
She's been a nice addition to the staff. She's added a little bit of youth and vigor to the department. She's been a very nice personality to add to the department and has meshed in well with the rest of the staff. I've then promoted Robert Price from assistant planner to planning and zoning administrator back in August. He's taken very well to the promotion. He's been with us for about 3.5 years now. I think he was worthwhile of making the promotion. He's been a very good, eager, still rounding into being a complete professional, but I think he's made some very nice strides in growth professionally here in Merrimack, and I'm really pleased to be able to see him make that jump here in the department. And most recently, we hired Kelly Chamel, who previously worked for the Office of Strategic Initiatives for the state of New Hampshire. She's still learning. This is her first foray into local government. We haven't taken the training wheels off quite yet where we'd send her solo to a meeting, but she's getting the experience. She's working well with the department. She's asking great questions, and I think she has a very bright professional future ahead of her as well. It's unfortunate that we've had, like I said, I've been here since 2011 now, and I'm on my 4th assistant planner, my 3rd planning and zoning administrator, and my 4th either office manager or part-time secretary. I'd like to think that it's not that I'm a terrible manager, but that I provide an opportunity for people on the younger side of their professional careers to gain experience, learn in a local government situation, and move on to bigger and better things. I take one of my responsibilities as a department director in making sure that my employees are prepared for professional growth and are ready to make a jump to a bigger and better position. And in that circumstance, I'm extraordinarily pleased. That being said, I certainly welcome any questions, any sections of the budget. As I usually do, I will give you a quick update on the number of hours that we've spent at land use meetings and the number of agenda items. 2017 saw 106 agenda items for the Planning Board and Zoning Board, which is up from 100 in 2016. And we also went up from 67.12 staff hours to 80.12. Mainly, I think there's 2 reasons for that. We've had a couple of larger projects that have been on the agendas for the later part of 2017, as well as doubling up on staff with Kelly being new to the department and having 2 people at meetings that she's been attending rather than 1. So I don't expect and I don't foresee that that's a specific increase due to the amount or length of meetings, more so than it is just doubling up on staff at some of those meetings. But I'd certainly welcome questions, any part of the budget at this point.
Paul first.
I want to just circle back to the vehicle. Primarily, it will be housed in community development, but it will be available to all departments. Like Diane, when Diane had her part-time people that had to go to Concord and get trained, it was basically we were praying that the car made it there and back. So with the newer vehicle, she'll be able to use it with her people.
She just had to drive it in reverse.
That's it.
She should have made it.
So, but
A quick question about cars. Can employees use their own cars and get reimbursed, or what is the?
they can use their own car and get reimbursed for the mileage, and that's what we had to do with Diane's employees. But to have a car where they can take it up, because some employees don't want to use their own car to go up to Concord. They want to use a vehicle. So that's one of the reasons why we looked at buying a used, not a new. This is going to be a used vehicle like a Ford Fusion or a used Explorer that's got some miles on it. And that's why we looked at buying used, so that it can be a pool car for town hall.
And to follow up on Paul, I think one of the advantages to buying a used car outside of our existing pool of vehicles, like police vehicles, is the type of usage on a police cruiser versus a private vehicle is immensely different, as Pete, I think, can attest to. And I think we'd probably get better utilization and better length of life out of a vehicle this way than utilizing a former cruiser again.
Bill?
So, the question I would ask regarding the vehicle, and this would be directed to either Eileen or Paul, why do we have it under the community development line item as opposed to the general government line item?
Once again, it was brought up from Tim for Tim's purposes in his department, and as we are looking at trying to get this vehicle out there, they're going to be using it 75 to 80% of the time, and that's why it got put there.
But if it's a pool vehicle, and other people in town hall are going to have access to this vehicle, I really think it should feel from a philosophical, and this is me, if I'm the minority, I'll keep my mouth shut, but philosophically, we should be line iteming it under the general government ledger as opposed to community development. Because, there could be a year that Tim only uses it 10% of the time, and, Diane and Brenda could be going to several different things, and they're using it 50% of the time.
Eileen? And then Pete.
I think the reason why we wanted to put it under community development is so people understand that it's primarily community development and not for a pool car for everybody in the whole town hall to use. Tim is not going to use it 10% of the time. Tim's office is going to use it a significant amount of the time. But it will be available for others when his department is not using it. Your point is well taken. About being in general government, but we wanted to kind of emphasize that it was primarily going to be for community development. So that's why it's in here.
Peter?
Tim, and I don't know if you have the info, how many miles did you guys, travel miles, did community development put on?
I don't have a specific number, but I would estimate I would say that 95% of our vehicle usage is local within town, so you're probably talking less than 2,000 miles a year. If
2,000 a year?
Yeah. It's a mile or two here or there, a couple times a week.
Yeah. And you said some staff gets mileage for when they travel?
Typically, when we do out-of-town conferences and whatnot, we don't utilize the town vehicle. We utilize our own vehicles and do the mileage reimbursement route for that.
Okay, thank you.
Especially if you're staying over or whatever.
Certainly.
Yeah, well, Bill, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tim, just kind of a philosophical question. With the new project being proposed down next to the outlets and some of the challenges that have been before the zoning board, and yet we've seen some significant turnover in our department, do we have any concerns about the department being able to adequately manage the growth that's going on in this town, and or is it a question of educating our employees so that they're best prepared to?
I have absolutely no qualms whatsoever about the competency of the staff, including Kelly. Not meaning competence. I didn't mean to say competency, but I believe that we have more than adequate tools, and we have resources built in with this budget to utilize consultant services as needed if we do need to go that route. But I'm absolutely comfortable that we can handle the growth that's anticipated for the community right now.
And a quick follow-up, Madam Chair.
Absolutely.
I'm probably being redundant because I think I know your answer, but we continue to be satisfied with the transportation piece from the NRPC?
We do. I think Jay Mankara has been a very nice addition to the staff over there. It was tough to see Tim Roach go, but I don't think we could have done much better than Jay.
Have you had the opportunity to talk with the new transportation planner over there?
I have not yet at this stage. That's primarily been Don and Kyle that have been engaged with those folks.
Worth the phone call, he's sharp.
Absolutely.
Very sharp. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else? Oh, you got off kind of easy. We should think of something. That's okay.
I am about to get up and go, and thank you very much, as always. I appreciate the opportunity to present.
Very good.
Thanks,
Good
Tim. Have a
night,
good
Tim.
week.
Next, assessing, tab number 2.
The assessing budget basically is a flatline budget. If it wasn't for the increase in health insurance, their budget would have been 0. They went up a little over $3,000. Actually, I think it was less than 3,000.
Yeah, 51.7 to 54.9. Are there any questions from anyone? Seeing none. Okay, we can move on.
Just a comment to Eileen.
Okay.
I'll talk to you offline, but I do want to follow up with you regarding assessing. Thank you.
Okay. Town clerk, town collector, hiding back there. Tab number 24, and Brenda as well. Anything, Eileen?
I'm not going to give Diane's presentation for her, obviously, because she's an elected official as well. So, but I just wanted to lend my support to Diane for removing a part-time position in the clerk's office and filling a full-time position. It's been a very difficult time. I don't know what the turnover has been, but it's been, 3 or 4 people in the past couple of years, and she can get more into it. But the problem is that it takes a significant amount of training, and they're off training for a long time because there's tax collecting, and then there's motor vehicles, and then there's vital records, and then there's all kinds of different things like that. Taking people's credit cards, and that's where most of the money that the town collects goes through. So we need to have people that are trained and have been there for a while, rather than having a revolving door, as well as the ability to have someone to help with those long lines. So I just wanted to lend my support to Diane for that change.
Okay, Diane, go right ahead.
Thank you. So it's not often that I give you a handout. I think this is probably one of a few budgets that I've submitted with an increase. So I wanted to back up the reasons why we have an increase, and there's a little light reading in case you have any questions later on. The handout basically summarizes pretty much what Eileen just spoke to. In the 2007-2008 budget year, the town was financially at a different place. There were a lot of calls for taxes to be reduced, for budgets to be flatlined, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the positions within the town clerk tax collector's budget was cut and put to 21 hours. That coincided with the state's implementation of their statewide motor vehicle system, which we all call MAP. MAP, since that time, the state has continually opened up processes that communities can now do locally so that residents don't have to go to the DMV. The past several years, our trends have been that our state transaction numbers are actually exceeding our local transaction types. So it has grown substantially, the types of transactions that we are processing. I did provide you with a graph just to give you a little handout that shows where we've gone over the last 10 years in terms of registrations in general, but you'll see with the red line on the graph signifies the state transactions. So over this 10-year period, they've jumped pretty significantly. It's not just transaction types, but it's also what staff has to do to process the transaction. There are now a number of layers of things that happen when a customer comes in. We have to ask them for ID. We have to capture their ID number. We have to document it on the registration that we're processing. We take their payment. Obviously, all of the calculating, the accounting for the monies, all of that is fine. But then we have a doc pile or a document pile that goes to the state. It's very specific. They have to put that all in certain order based on form size, form type, etc. So these are all time-consuming things while the line is building up that they have to do in between each customer before they can take the next customer. So just to give you an example of how things have started to go from quick transactions to now they're lengthy transactions that they're spending with the customer. So over this past 10-year period, the department has tried to work with the part-time positions. We've submitted 7 funding requests over the years to either increase hours, increase part-time hours, to try to give us more staff coverage and assistance with keeping up with the workload. Some of the requests were very small, and almost every request has been granted over this 10-year period. The only ones that weren't were to increase hours significantly. 2 requests were submitted to increase hours to 32 hours, and then, Obamacare and that whole thing got in the way, which made it impossible for us to offer more than 32 hours a week. In the 15-16 budget cycle, we requested a second 20-hour-a-week part-time position, thinking that might help. Brenda and I worked extensively to make the hours attractive to someone working part-time so that we could schedule one of the part-time people half of the week and they get a nice long weekend, and the other one works the other half of the week and they get a nice long weekend at the beginning of the week, trying to give them some incentive for wanting to work part-time. It just hasn't been working. Over the past 2 years, we've hired 5 part-time employees, and we've received 4 resignations. One of the 5th part-time employee that we hired is our longtime employee, Janet Kilpatrick, who retired this year. And so she filled one of our vacant part-time positions because she only wants to work part-time. And we know she's not going to leave us and go get a full-time position somewhere else. But that leaves us with the second part-time position vacant. Over the past 2 years, between the 2 positions, we've had vacancies for almost 14 months. And when we have had the positions filled, we've had about 8 months where we've continued to be shorthanded, even though we've had a body, because of training and certifications. On the other hand, with our full-time employees, we have virtually no turnaround. And I think by placing this 28-hour position to full-time, I think that's going to stop our revolving door. Most of the people that we hire will swear up and down while they're in the interview that they only want to work part-time, but after they've been here a month or 2, they're posting for other jobs. They're putting their goals out there that they'd like to be full-time by the end of the year, things like that. So, it's just been very difficult to keep positions here. When we're busy on the window, or if we're shorthanded on the window, because counter staff is shorthanded, Brenda and I have to fill in. Not that we don't want to, we love filling in, we love the public, but that places a burden on our operations if I have deadlines for Paul or Eileen or something. Now I'm on the window trying to take care of the customers, or Brenda's on the window, and some of our other duties aren't getting done as quickly as they should. So I don't want it to be taken that we don't want to work the counter or do things, but we get paid to do other higher items, but it's been tough.
Questions? Finley?
Thanks, Nance. Sorry, I got a little laryngitis, which I'm sure makes everybody happy, but I was wondering, is it because of the pay, or is it because they just didn't want part-time work, they were looking for full-time employment that they left?
Well, a couple of years ago, it was both. And we worked very hard, Eileen and this board and HR worked very hard to fix the pay inequities that staff was, concerned about. And so I don't think it's completely the pay now. I think it's the hours and the benefits. 2 of our last part-time employees worked another part-time job because they needed, for their families and their households, they needed the income. And so they would leave here and go to their other job. So we had 2 of them that were working 2 part-time jobs at the same time. They need the hours and they need the benefits.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Go ahead, you're gonna go ahead, Paul, and then Tom.
Well, I was
Oh,
going
thank
to
you.
ask you if you were done this, then we could move on to
Please do.
a couple of other things, so.
Well, could I touch
yeah.
back on the new in person? Just to outline for us or to specify for us the difference in cost factors. It's looking like about $20,000 a year for the part-time person, and the health insurance alone that's added for the full-time person is about $20,000 a year, plus the additional 12 hours, which is trivial in comparison, I'm guessing. Is that
Did you say trivial? The
12 hours
Yeah,
versus
it's a-
28 versus
yeah.
20,000 for insurance?
Right,
I mean,
it's a 12-hour increase to get them to 12, to get them to 40, but the cost is the upload on the benefits. You got it.
Eileen?
It's approximately a $37,000 increase between the making the part-time, full-time, and adding the benefits.
And their current pay is about 20 or 30,000? I mean, so it's doubling the cost to,
Yes, and more, I would say.
more than
Because
doubling the cost to go to
yes,
full-time.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like it's important. I'm not disagreeing with you. I just wanted to try and make it as clear as we could as to what cost factors we're asking for. You mentioned it sort of on the side, just trying to make it a little more clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, Nancy.
Jackie?
It also seems to me, after passing through the town hall frequently in the last 50 years, that it's a highly skilled job. And I'm questioning your knowledge about how competitive it is as a part-time job versus like a retail job. If they're not going to earn appreciably more at such a highly skilled job, I kind of question the whole idea of wanting a part-time worker. Or not wanting one, but getting one that can do the job. It just seems to me to be something, like Janet is probably the only part-time person in town who could actually step in and do that job.
Bill?
So, just help me, and maybe my arithmetic is fuzzy and I apologize. We had a clerk that retired last year, correct?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that that individual was making more than the highest clerical person that you have listed here on your budget?
Yes.
Okay. So that would explain, when I do the quick arithmetic, that explains the discrepancy because we were paying them at a higher rate.
Yes.
Okay. So when I see the line item for 33,384, that's what we're going to be offering the new person?
Correct.
Okay.
What's the number again?
33,384 under wages clerical 1-24-8102
Gotcha, yeah.
on page 123.
Yeah.
So you're going to retain 1 part-time person, 4 full-timers, you and Brenda.
Correct.
Okay. And that's going to be adequate to handle the day-to-day operation of managing the, and I'm asking this question sincerely because I know there's been times I've been in there and the line's been out the door.
Well,
And I know you hired a young woman to work there who I hope is still working there and still fitting in. But I want to make sure that we're, getting our people that are going there to do business, to get them in there, do what they need to do, and do so in such a way so that they're leaving, and happy and feel like they didn't waste their time.
I agree, and I think that I think if we can fill this position with a full-time person, I think once somebody's in there and established, I'm not expecting that they're going to be looking for other employment. So what typically happens is they stay. Our full-time staff tends to stay. I have employees there that are 18, 20, 20-year employees.
Right.
So they stay. So if I can get somebody in there who will stay more than 6 months, or the last one, 2 months, stay more than 6 months or a year, then they're going to be much more proficient in their job as they grow with it, and they're going to be more valuable, and they're going to be a lot quicker with the customer and with the processing and their knowledge. And that's what we want, is we want to bring somebody in that wants to be there, that isn't out looking for another job because they need more hours and benefits, and who will be able to stay on long-term and help us grow with the department.
And I'm, not to mention names, Madam Chair, but Janet, who, she's wonderful, and how many years was she?
She's one of our 20-year employees.
20-year employees.
Yep.
So the fact that she's coming back part-time
Yep.
to share that institutional knowledge, I think, is invaluable to how we run, or how you and Brenda run the clerk's office. So I'm happy to hear that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Tom?
Sorry, just one more question I wanted to ask. Because it's so difficult to bring in new people and to expand forces and whatnot, it's really easy to see the times, like at the end of the month or the end of the year, when you're extremely busy. I'm wondering how consistent or even your flow is, so that if you have 4 people at the counter all the time with 4 full-time people, are they busy all the time, or do you have other things they can be doing?
They pretty much are busy all the time. If you come into my office and you don't see a line, come to ask to walk around the back, because that's where we're doing all the credit card transactions.
I'm believing you. I just wanted to hear that.
The dog licenses, the vital records, the filing. We have record keeping that we have to do. So the mail, I told Brenda this morning, I wished I had taken a picture of the daily mail that comes in to the town hall. Most departments get 4 or 5 pieces of mail. We get probably 40 to 60 on average every day, unless we've just issued the renewal notices for motor vehicles, dog licenses, or tax bills. Then we get the whole bin or 2 coming in. So, I mean, that speaks to why we need bodies to be able to do all of this, processing. And one of the other charts that I gave you on the back of your handout for your consideration while you're thinking about how you're going to deliberate is this is a phone call summary, and these are just phone calls coming into the main line. This is last year's 2017's phone call summary coming into the main line numbers, not calls that came into maybe general government and got transferred to the town clerk's office, or maybe came into finance and got transferred to assessing. But I know Eileen's staff can attest to the number of people who call their department saying, I've been trying to call the town clerk's office, I can't get through. Well, when you average between 1,700 and 4,000 calls a year, all the other departments, and we're averaging 14,000, I need people to answer the phone.
Might a lot of those calls be after they receive the tax bills?
Oh, a lot of them most certainly are.
Are there sort of patterns in the way? Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of the calls are you open? And how do I pay for my car registration? And what do I need? And basically, informational calls that these people
Right.
want to come in and pay something, they just need the information. So
Yeah.
Or
we
just-
try when they're busy to
Yeah.
answer those kind of calls, but there's a lot of calls that are very specific. I moved from Massachusetts and I got blah, 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 and I'm leasing a vehicle. What do I need?
Right.
Hold on.
Or when
Transfer.
they don't know who to call,
Right.
Sure.
they call the town clerk.
Which makes sense too.
So we get a
Right.
lot of those calls as well.
So I guess,
Bill and then Jackie.
so
And then Pete.
not looking to add money to a budget, but I mean, it almost begs the question, do you have an IVR line that adequately routes a specific call to a a specific individual in the department, and if not, would having an IVR line that would say, you know, for frequently asked questions, go to
What's an IVR?
interactive voice response system.
What's an IVR line? I know what it is,
Interactive-
but
That's
no one
what
else
he's
does.
Interactive voice response line. In other words, when you call up, you know, press 1 for such and such, press 2 for such and such. So how difficult would it be to have like a voice that says, you know, commonly asked questions can be found at merrimacknh.gov?
We have something similar, because they can call, and if they press, I think it's 2, they get the holiday listing. If they press 3, they get hours and directions. And then, I mean, in our greeting, we tell them for questions regarding car registrations, property taxes, you know,
Okay.
most of these things can be found on our website, and we give the website address out. So I don't know if that's the same concept, but we do have.
It's the same concept, just, you know,
Yeah.
$14,000 calls a year, and they happen, you know, they happen in June and December. It almost kind of begs the question, you know, what can we do to be driving traffic to the website, or what can we be doing to encourage Diane to at least dedicate somebody to be available to answer the phone during those particular time periods?
Yeah,
I don't know
but I
what,
mean, our phone is busy
I know
all
it
the
is.
time, all the time.
I know it is, Diane. I know
Ellie,
it is.
you had something to say?
The only thing that I wanted to say is I'm very surprised that there aren't a lot of more people, especially the younger people, who don't use the prepaid envelopes to just, you know, you get your registration in the mail, and all you have to do is mail it back, and they mail it back to you. And so it's very surprising to see so many of the younger people in line. You'd think that they'd take advantage of that service. And secondly, being kind of old-fashioned in that way, I very much prefer a person to answer the phone whenever possible. And I know it's not always possible, but, you know, I know that I've tried to call different town halls, even smaller than ours, and it takes me 5 minutes to get to the person that I want to, and then I get a voicemail. So I've never spoken to a person, and it just makes it seem like there's nobody here except robots. But that's just me.
Jackie, then Peter?
Bill covered a lot of what I wanted to say, but I did think that, I think that the reason why the young people are in line is that the whole process, I think, is confusing. Not your fault, but, you know, where do you go for your license? Where do you go for this? And I think people get confused, and sure, it's online, I'm sure it is, but they want somebody to tell them. And that's why I think that maybe the system that everybody hates, I know, but it must work, the frequently asked questions are, you know, press 1 if you want to know about, you know, what to bring with you to register a car or to sell one, or, you know, whatever it is, and 2 for such and such. And I think a more extensive 1, 2, and 3 kind of a thing might work. Because I know that it must be online, but people find it hard to somehow navigate through.
Pete?
Diane, I see the health insurance, looks like about a $20,000 increase.
Microphone?
I'm sorry. I see that the health insurance is about a $20,000 increase. Is that in anticipation of this new full-time employee?
Correct.
Okay.
The new person is included in Diane's
Okay.
budget.
And kind of a separate topic is, now when someone goes in to the clerk's office to pay something, and frequently people all no carry cash anymore, what's the fee now to pay with your debit card?
If they swipe a debit card, it's $2.50.
Okay.
If they use credit, it's 2.79%. For their motor vehicle, it's 2.9.
3.0% for taxes.
Yeah, three even. Thought it was 2.99. 3% if they pay their taxes at the window, or 2.79 if they pay their taxes online. So it depends on which payment method they're using, but yes.
So you're going to pay, so if I paid online with my credit card, I'm going to get whacked for doing that.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna get whacked with the regular fees as well, my interest fees on my credit card.
Yes, if you choose to use a credit card, you pay the merchant the vendor fees.
Now,
Yeah, the
is
town
there
does not absorb
A
those.
cost incurred by the town and your office to use these services?
No,
Okay.
no.
It's passed on.
It's passed to the
Excuse me?
consumer.
Pass it on to the,
Right.
to the individuals.
I was gonna
Right.
say, we do, but
The
you're paying
individual
for it.
is paying the fee, that's why they're paying the 3%,
We would
the
normally be charged that, but you're
2.79.
paying it.
Correct.
All right, I'm just a little curious about that and stuff.
Eileen?
It was, our equipment was free.
I think that the reason why
now.
credit cards look so attractive to people is because as soon as you're late on your taxes, you start paying 12% interest. And then after a certain period of time, which may be around 6 months, it goes up to 18%. So, and there's fees on top of that. So in some people's cases, it looks an awful lot more attractive to them to put it on their credit cards, or if they're desperate. So we'll also start seeing the amount of interest on delinquent taxes going down in terms of revenue.
Okay. And just one final thing is, now with the hiring of this person, do you see the hours of operation changing, maybe staying open later? Because I think frequently one of the things I hear from people is, I gotta work during the day, I can't get in. So do you see some flexibility there?
Potentially, Brenda and I have been talking about that because this question does come up pretty much every other year. And with the staffing that we had now with the part-time people, there was no way. And especially the last 2 years with us being primarily shorthanded, it would have never worked. But we have talked about that a little bit, and we think that there may be an opportunity where we would be able to offer maybe a night a month or something like that. There's some logistics that we have to work out because it's going to not only affect that day that we might be open, it's going to affect a different day. And so we're going to have to arrange staff, either, some things that we're going to have to work out is, are we going to have to pull staff off the window early on one day so that somebody else can work late the next day, because we have the whole state balancing thing that we have to take into account, because we have, criteria with them that we have to be balanced before they can work. So if I have people coming in late to stay late the next morning, I have to get them balanced the night before they can go home, and I can't balance them. They have to be logged in the system to do what they have to do. So there's some logistics and potential overtime costs that may crop up and things like that. But we've talked about it, and we're exploring for just in case this budget proposal does pass.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
I agree with you, Pete. I think it would be a major convenience, even if it's like one evening, like one a month. There's no way people would remember which month, but even an hour and a half beyond
I mean, if you had
one day a week,
yeah, 1 day a week
where
till
someone
6 o'clock.
comes in
6 or 7.
six or seven, and the next morning they come in late.
Well, we opened
Then
the
I'm
window.
Go ahead.
We opened the window a half hour late because of the overtime. The office is only open for 7.5 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, not for overtime, but our posted hours are 9 to 4:30, but I can tell you that almost every single day, that office is open no later than 8:45. So, because
Oh, no, right, but
we
they-
open, but our posted hours
Yes.
are 9. But
Right.
as soon
I'm
as the
sorry.
girls are able to open, that window is open, and typically, we're open no later than 8:45 right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay,
And I
fine.
didn't mean anything other than that. I was just
No,
saying
but
those hours
it
were-
wasn't overtime related. Well, it was because they weren't staying late the night
Well,
before.
right,
Yes,
there's gonna
yes.
have to be another 15 minutes to a half hour
Right.
in order to accommodate the
Yep.
bookkeeping. But there are many avenues for many things that have to happen at town clerk's office that can be done online or through the mail.
Correct.
So,
Yep.
and I don't know, if we ever tried it, it might work out, but I think that you might find that it won't, especially if it's only one night a month.
And that's the thing that Brenda and I talked about. I mean, we did have evening hours for many years ago. And what we found, we even shifted them a number of times because people weren't using them. We used to be open on Monday nights from 7 to 9. It was every Monday night years ago when I first started working here, and Bob Morrow was still here. It was every Monday night from 7 till 9. People stopped coming in, so then it got switched to every other Monday night from 7 to 9. That started to peter, so then we switched with going from opening and staying open straight through. And we were seeing 3 or 4 customers a night, and we were paying 4 or 5 people overtime, a couple of hours every night, to accommodate 3 people. And so that's when it was decided that we're just going to, we're going to eliminate those. Again, part of the budget thing was looking at where our money is best spent. So are we open to, if I have staff, trying it? Absolutely. Is it a guarantee that it's going to work and we're going to do it forever? Can't say that. If it's going to start costing us money and people aren't using it, we're going to go back to the way we did it. But it's worth a shot if it passes and we can accommodate it.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? Oh, did you have a question, Jackie?
Well, just a comment that if the window tends to open early because people are lining up, it means to me that people aren't keeping track of when it's open. They're not good. It's not going to benefit anybody to leave it open then. And when the dog licenses were due, and when the rabies clinic was going on, and you opened it down all.
We did.
I don't think you got much business at all.
No, there
That's
were. At that time, there were about 3,000 dogs still needing to be licensed. We had 23 people walk through the door. I sent over 900 names to the police department in June for unlicensed dogs because nobody came in on that Saturday that we offered Saturday hours.
Yeah.
Well, we had 23 people, so we were happy to see them. But the other, 900 owners or whatever, for whatever reason, didn't take advantage of it. And it's advertised pretty well in advance and all of that, so.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and finish the remainder,
right.
probably having to do with the voting booth, right?
One other thing for the town clerk budget that you'll see in there is in the office equipment.
Which is
equipment.
8504.
8504. I am requesting, or we are requesting $2,000 for printers. These are our heavy-duty workhorse printers within the department that print all of the tax bills, all of the renewal forms, all of the lien letters. Everything that we need to print is done on these printers. The printers that we currently have, one of them was purchased used back in 2012 or 2013, and the other one is about 10 or 12 years old now. I sent the council an email back in 2013, complimenting Chuck and detailing some of the problems that we had with these printers at the time and the struggle we went through to get the tax bills out. Well, we're still using these printers 4 years later, and they still continue to act up. In fact, I've had Chuck upstairs in my office quite a bit the last 2 weeks, and it's time. We've super glued them, we've Mickey Moused them together, we've taken the drawers out, we've learned how to control the heat and all that stuff, but it's time. They're on their last legs, they need to go, or else we won't be able to get tax bills out, potentially.
Don't worry, we'll find a way to get it. Financial benefit, that's right.
Okay,
Just
and the
give me a
voting
2-week
booth?
lead. I gotta get lockbox all set up.
And the voting booths?
And voting booths, yes. So I was asked to look into information regarding replacing the town's voting booths. These were put in the town clerk's budget, I guess, so that I could present it to you tonight. My understanding is they'll go to general government. So I just don't want that big increase in my budget. They will go to your general government budget, huh? So what you have before you is what New Hampshire has available now for voting booths. It is a four-station Franklin voting booth, and New Hampshire law requires that each side of the booth have a curtain for privacy. The curtains are $199 each. The four-station voting booth is $869 each. Merrimack needs a total of 200 voting booths to be in compliance with state law. So that means you'd need to buy 50 of these units if you wanted to replace all of them all at the same time. You don't have to do that. You can purchase them in blocks. The poor gentleman who has these booths kind of every couple of months sends me a PO. He's waiting for us to sign, but you don't have to buy all 200. You can get them as you feel you want to
Yeah,
purchase
we'd
them.
have to, now, did we replace a couple of the machines, right?
Yeah, we replaced a couple of the machines.
But have we heard regarding, what? Have we heard anything about how many booths should be? I know some of them need to be replaced, but not all of them. I
That
mean,
would
we
be-
don't have to replace.
No, you can use what we
Did you have a
now.
question, Bill? Do you guys have a question?
I'm sorry,
Because
I thought the concern was not necessarily the booth, but the counting machines.
Well,
the
that's
vote
why
counting
that's
machines.
why I'm
We
asking
did
the
replace a
question.
couple counting machines, but as we're doing that, we found out about the voting booths.
There are some that need replacement, I
Yes, the
understand,
booths.
but not all of them, to the best of my knowledge. And we don't have to do all 200. We can do whatever.
Yeah, because you can supplement with what we have now and
We could do
supplement
it
the new and the
over.
old. Yep.
But when you do something like that, I would recommend that if you're gonna replace the voting booths, say at St. John Newman, you replace all the voting booths.
I
You don't
understand.
replace like 8
But
units.
that's not
in-
200.
No, but I don't know how many voting booths at each
Right.
location.
I think you said we have to have 200 in order to be compliant.
We
So
do.
how many do we have?
We have to have a total of 200.
Okay, but how many do we have?
We have right now 100 and, we actually do not have, we have 160 voting booths on hand, and we supplement our shortage of voting booths right now, and I don't recommend this as a permanent solution going forward, but we supplement with the voting screens. So you have to have tables set up, and then you set the
Oh, yeah,
screens up.
yeah. You use
So-
some of those for the handicap.
Yes, yep, so that's how we're getting around right now, having 200 hard metal booths.
Okay, so we need
We need to have.
40.
10 of them.
No, we need, if we're 160 and we're required to have 200,
Right.
we need 40.
So you need
If
10
you're
of
gonna
those.
use screens and supplement with screens, which is what I'm saying.
No, 40 booths.
Oh, okay, okay, I see what you're saying, start with the 40, yep. Okay, I'm
And that
good.
would meet the criteria. And where they go could be determined at some point. Right?
And then you would wanna possibly look at the ones that are falling apart.
Well, but see, that's an assessment.
Right.
we don't know what
As we
that
go
is.
through the process, though, we could look at that and then come
Correct.
back.
That's what I'm wondering. Jackie?
What exactly is wrong with them? I've never had an answer.
What is wrong with the
Yes,
voting
what is
booths?
wrong? What needs to be replaced
Oh,
about
some of
them?
them are falling apart.
They're falling
Jackie.
apart,
Well,
yeah.
they-
Trying to put them together, if you've been there when they've assembled them.
Well, I have, and taken apart. I
Some of
have,
them
and
are-
I haven't been. I'm not criticizing.
No.
I
Some
am
of the
just
trays
curious.
are bent, so the pins and the latches where they lock
tell
in,
they're
they
worn.
don't lock, they're wobbly.
Okay.
Some of the bars that the curtains are supposed to hang on, the bars are broken, so we kind of duct tape the
Okay.
curtains
I mean,
back
there
up.
are many
but-
that are fine.
Yeah,
Yes.
there are a lot that are just,
Yeah,
it's
and I
time.
agree with Paul that once they're segregated, the good ones, that you could earmark them for
Yes.
an appropriate place.
We'll have better numbers
Yeah,
probably
once
for
we
Monday.
set them up.
Well, once we set them up, but we'll have the counts
Someone
by
else have a question?
polling place for the council too, so they know how many booths for each polling place is gonna be needed to
Yeah,
get the
Lynn
200.
Lynn probably.
Yeah, I have that.
Because obviously, JMUs would have the most numbers, right?
So you
Then
need,
probably St. John Newman. Oh, you already do?
70,
So when you come for final deliberation, yes, I think we need that information.
yep.
I would
We
like
have-
it,
We
anyway.
have 30 at St. John Newman, we have 40 at the middle school, and the rest are all over at Upper Elementary right now. The other 90,
Or at Jamie's.
that's how our breakout is right now. Yeah, 90 at J Muse, and the other 70 are broken out between 30 at St. John Newman and 40 at the middle school.
Middle, okay. And their distribution, they think of it themselves. Any other questions?
Do we need that number of 200 at every election or at state elections? or
Presidential,
Presidential election.
presidential elections.
So we don't need that for the majority of our elections in town.
No, I think I gave you the RSA, but for a primary or a presidential election, you need a presidential election, one booth for every 100 voters. Town meeting is one booth for every 200 voters, and a primary is one for every 150.
That's right, yeah, Tom.
So based on our
Okay, 'cause I
checklist
didn't get those
numbers,
numbers,
which
thanks.
are just over 20,000, that puts us at that one for every 100, so.
So that's the number
200
we're using,
booths.
20,000.
Yep, we had 20,000 on the checklist. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that would be helpful for the deliberations to have that.
Unless you-
Any other questions? Bill?
$200 for a curtain?
Yes. They actually have to hand make the curtains so that they comply with New Hampshire state law. The curtain comes in a certain size, and the gentleman and his wife and staff and whatever actually have to sew additional material onto it so it meets New Hampshire's requirements so that they can sell them in New Hampshire. And this is a sole source
Sole
vendor.
source, exactly, so you can't go up
Town
a
of
bid.
Bedford did go out to bid within the last month or so because they're looking to replace. And I did catch up with Lori, the town clerk in Bedford, and she did advise, because I kind of said to her, I don't think you're going to find any other ones. And she said, nope, I have confirmed they are the only one. It is a sole source vendor. Yep.
Give it
Thank
to
you.
Peter. I wonder who they know.
What a racket. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, we're all set, right? Okay, thank you very much, ladies.
Thank
Diane, Brenda,
you.
thank you.
Just one last question. What's our status now with voting machines themselves? Paul said we've gotten a couple.
Yes, we purchased an additional voting machine so that we'd have enough to evenly divide at the 3 polling locations. And then we purchased a new black box. I believe you worked down at
St.
the
John Newman.
precinct
Oh, yeah.
that had the cracked black box. So we have also purchased a new cracked
Not cracked.
an uncracked black box.
Okay.
And the best part about this?
Yes.
It's sole source again, and they're not making them anymore.
Yep.
And New Hampshire has not changed their requirements.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see changes coming in the future for voting, because the voting systems are not being manufactured anymore, and so right now, they're going through their supply and trying to refurbish everybody right now to keep them in for the long term. My understanding is Secretary of State is not looking at anything right now to replace what municipalities are using. They are still working on e-poll, and I know you guys have been interested in that. While I'm here, I'll just let you know that there is a meeting on February 2nd. They're going to discuss the approved vendors. So right
Explain what e-poll is.
now, for those of you who don't know what e-poll is electronic checklist check-in at elections. So instead of going to a certain table, your name is at you check in by your last name at a certain table, and it's all paper, and they check you off by paper. E-poll is a digital checklist contained on a laptop or a tablet. You would go with your driver's license. They would scan your license through their machine. It would bring up all of your information. You would sign or click or something indicating that you're checking in, and then you'd be given your ballot and you would go vote. It's supposed to be very streamlined and efficient at polling locations because you can check in at any line. You don't have to go to the line where your name is. And for those of you who have served as ballot inspectors, I know Jackie you have, and you've filled in at tables periodically, some of you counselors when you've needed to. When people need at a primary, they have to designate a party, or it comes up and tells you the party. All of that information is captured right there electronically. So there's no forgetting, Mary just left, oh crap, I don't remember what ballot she took. I'll just guess and I'll write Republican, and then the end of the night our numbers don't match. It won't let them leave the polling station until like everything is complete with their ballot. So the end of night reconciliation and the reporting to the state is just going to be tremendous if we ever get one of these off the ground here in
Have they
New
piloted
Hampshire.
it anywhere?
There are 2 towns. Bedford piloted one last year, and then Rochester held one. I'm going to the meeting on the 2nd because they're going to have a list of vendors that they have approved that municipalities can join and pilot. So what I understand is that if a municipality wants to do a trial, it's all at the municipality's cost, and there's a lot of reporting that has to go into the state. So before I say, oh yeah, let's try it in Merrimack, I want to see how bad it was in the other communities. Because eventually, whichever communities do this and comes out, then it'll be fixed and ready for everybody. So, but we're still about 5 years away from that even being implemented.
Question, Jackie?
Yes, I had the obvious question. If I'm registered at St. John, or I'm supposed to go to St. John Newman, can I go to Mastercola now? No.
No, because your checklists are set up the same as they would be for an election. They're all done correctly by the law, by what should be at each polling location. So, yep.
Unless they change that.
Yeah. Anything can change by then. Yep.
Is it the same guy
Until
who owns
they change
E-Reg?
it.
I'm sorry?
Is the E-poll the same as E-Reg?
Yeah, it just means electronic.
No, but I mean, is it the same company?
No,
No.
no. There's a number of different election software vendors who are doing this. They're from all over the country. And so I believe there's 12 of them right now. So which ones actually get selected to be able to be utilized in New Hampshire is going to be the interesting piece that we see.
I do have another question.
Go.
I just got a real ID, and
Did you have a fake ID before now?
not for a long time.
Hasn't been necessary.
Been a few years. Huh?
And it wasn't to drive. Is that going to be useful in any way in particular for voting?
I'm not sure it's going to be any more useful than a regular driver's
Okay.
license right now. So that I don't know. I haven't heard that it would be any more beneficial for somebody to have that over another ID for voting, but time may tell.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Now we have in media, Nick, who we only see one time a year. I think that's on purpose,
You
too.
didn't get to see me last year.
Be able to hide us. Right.
We had Justin present the budget
That's
last
right,
year, so you got
that's
a
right.
year off, and you got
Number 32.
the superstar.
Here I am.
I thought Nicholas was talking about himself.
Well,
He's
we're
the
both
superstar.
we're all stars here in the media division.
Oh, right.
Shout out to Chris Perez, who's taping the Conservation Commission next door.
Go right ahead, Nick.
I can get right
Anything you
into
wanna-
it. Our budget is pretty much the same as last year. There's a little bit of the health insurance has gone up a little bit, and so did our phones. Aside from that, everything is pretty much the same. The bottom line's almost identical, We are spending about $60,000 in equipment upgrades, which are 4 new cameras for this room here. These 4 cameras in this room, they will have approached nearly a 10-year lifespan once they're replaced. A couple of them have gone out for repair a couple times. So it's time to replace those. Another $10,000 on a piece of equipment, which is called a Comrex, which is going to enable us to go live via cellular to be able to stream meetings that are happening anywhere in town or elsewhere. So if there's an event that pertains to Merrimack happening in Nashua or Bedford, we'll be able to stream that meeting live, and then also on our channels as well. So a couple of years ago, we taped a water PFO meeting that happened in Nashua. It was a pipeline meeting.
It would have been the pipeline. Don't want to bring up the pipeline, but we were
That's
there.
right. It was down in one of the. It was at the hotel.
It was, yeah.
I
So
remember that.
so the Comrex, I feel like it's super loud. If we were to have the Comrex at
Now
that
you know what it
time,
feels
maybe
like.
I just need to lower my voice. If we had the Comrex at the time, we would have been able to broadcast it live. So
Yeah. Okay.
just anything pertaining to Merrimack, in and around Merrimack, we have the ability to stream live either to the channel or online.
You will.
Yeah,
It's cellular.
Bedford uses this piece of gear. They actually gave us a demonstration a couple months ago, and it was awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really good. So I think it's something that the town could definitely benefit from, and then we're
Now,
not
the
as
school, if the school has their meeting over at the school and not here,
The upper elementary school has
are
the.
you able to live stream that now?
from the high school. No, from
But
the
you
upper
will
elementary.
be able to with that.
We would be able to do that.
If
we
you had to.
Yeah, it's for that instance we would prefer an elected board or committee to meet in a room here.
Oh, I
But if
understand.
it's something that's happening off-site that pertains to Merrimack, then that would give us that ability to
Gives you
to
more
do that.
flexibility.
Absolutely.
Because it does. It happened recently.
You'd be able to cover the Merrimack Village Water District meetings?
I was just about to mention that.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I was.
So there's no
mentioning.
excuse?
No more excuses.
No more excuses?
Yeah,
Okay.
That's nice.
as long as it's a public meeting. If it's open
Right.
to the
Oh,
public,
it's,
it can be recorded.
they're a public meeting, yeah.
Yeah, whether that's the village district or anything else.
Correct. Nice.
And then aside from that, just another $10,000 in our budget for other equipment expenses that happen throughout the year. Something does need to be replaced versus repaired last minute, or, we always like to include that in the budget each year. And then aside from that, with the revenues that we expect from Comcast, those are usually given back to the taxpayers because we usually stay well under the budget. We stay well under the revenues that we receive from Comcast each year. I think it'll end up being close to $200,000 this year.
Tom, did you have a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, you talked about this new piece of equipment. Is that going to increase internet usage or Wi-Fi usage or
That's actually planned for in the
in the
budget as well.
$10,000?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
It's
And
like it's
it's a
like a
SIM
monthly
card.
fee, almost like a cell phone. You take a SIM card like you would from a cell phone, and it goes into the piece of equipment. So it's a monthly recurring fee that you get with any kind of cellular distributor, Verizon or AT&T.
Okay, so is
Yeah.
the 10K for the equipment or is it 10K for that monthly service?
The 10K is for the equipment, but there is we did account for that in the budget.
Where?
It should be
Or how
under.
much or?
It should be under phone. It's either under phone. It's under phone.
Is that the increase in the phone? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The phone's going up from 32 to 5,000?
Yep.
Okay. For that.
Eileen?
Yeah, at some point, some thought needs to be given to the media fund. I know in the past, there's been some issues about whether money should go in there or come out of there and that kind of thing before I got here. But what we've been doing since I've been here is instead of taking all of the money, the cable franchise fee money, and putting that into the media fund and then them spending about half of that and it going into basically their own fund balance. It's kind of happening like that again. We bring in about $400,000 of money into from the cable franchise fees. Then we use $200,000 of that to offset property taxes, and then the other $200,000 goes into media. If there's money left over at the end of the year, it goes basically into their fund balance, or if it ends up the cable franchise fee is a little bit less, then a little comes out. But what's happening now is that Paul tells me is that now that what we would refer to as fund balance has grown to a number of about $700,000. So
the fund balance for media?
In media. Mm-hmm. So some thought at some point really needs to, we were kind of milking off of that by using some of it to reduce taxes every year. And at some point you might think about wanting to use more for a while. Until that, I'm not really sure what the amount might be, but I don't even know if you guys knew that there's $700,000.
No, I knew that.
Plug your ears.
Yeah, I knew that. And also for several years, before we were in this facility here at Town Hall, we'd always thought that if we needed to leave the school and perhaps move into a different building, then that money would be available. Fortunately, the state, the court left. Obviously, the town donated the land there. The state built the courthouse, and we were able to use some of that fund to renovate this facility here, including this room, all of upstairs, and a lot of the other work that was done here was used from that fund.
Which is true, but it's building up again.
Absolutely. Now that we're here, and
so what you're saying is that we could go beyond the 200,000.
Yes, and I think that Paul and I, before you start your deliberations, at least to talk about revenue, is that we should really take a good review of it so that we kind of parcel it out as we've been trying to do with the general fund balance so that it doesn't do these spiky kind of things.
Pete?
And I'm just listening to this. Could we use some of that money towards the purchase of the $60,000 worth of office equipment that I'm seeing here for this year's budget?
Go ahead, Eileen.
You absolutely could. The issue really is in the revenue. So you have to budget it anyway in expenses because it's gross appropriations. But where you could make a difference is you could put it into more. Now we put $200,000 into general fund revenue. You might say to yourself, okay, I'm going to put $260,000 into general fund revenue, thereby reducing the tax burden by $60,000, something like that. But what I'm saying is I would appreciate if you would give Paul and I the opportunity to kind of look at it, look at the trend, and to see, because I'm pretty sure, I can't imagine why we couldn't use more. But I just want to make sure that we do it in an even way, if that's what you choose to do.
Paul?
Also, the media, what we're talking about, this budget, the $297,000 is not tax-based. It's based on just the franchise revenue fees. So this does not count towards the $5 and
whatever
$4.90 tax rate is. This did not count towards it. Just counts to that gross appropriation.
So the money that's being generated from the fees pays for that $297.
Correct.
And it still has extra on top of that.
Correct.
Tom?
So do you guys know how many people watch the stations? And I'll let you answer that, and I'm going to follow up.
Sure. There's no way to gauge exactly how many people are watching the cable channels themselves.
Okay.
Even cable ratings is kind of an archaic process of Nielsen ratings. It's a survey.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know exactly how many people are watching our channels at any given time. Now that a lot of our meetings are online, we can see numbers that way, how people are watching our the board and committee meetings that we put online, but not necessarily just cable TV.
So I know on Comcast, you have, I think around 20, 21, 22, right, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then you have HD channels, which are 700.
Right.
So I'm going to go with this. I mean, is it possible, will you guys ever get into the 700 channels?
We're going to be up for, this has been discussed.
Please don't do HD.
This has
I
been
know.
discussed
Yeah.
quite a bit. And I spoke to Brian
We want
Christensen.
Photoshop, we don't want HD.
We want the Vaseline lens.
Spoke to Brian Christensen, our Comcast rep, today. And Justin and I had this conversation so many times, and we've attended meetings with other access centers to see if we could get our channels in the HD tier. That's exactly what you're talking about. And it's very difficult to do so. They just don't see it. They don't see us as a priority. Comcast doesn't see community TV necessarily as a priority to shift us into the HD tier.
Okay.
So we are on channels 20, 21, 22. What we're trying to focus on, for a while, we wanted to be on that tier. And I think moving forward, what we want to focus on is our programs being available on demand and online. So as much as, cable pays for what we do in our department, but I think the trend is having content available online, and that's where we want to put our focus.
Yeah, I just think you need a lot more subscribers watching because, now everything's going HD. Everything is pretty much HD now.
Yeah.
Not that I want to look any better on TV, trust me.
Well, we can do that for you.
You can.
We can do that for you.
Yeah, I think the big issue with the HDTV, or one of the big issues, is that people are, the community centers are renegotiating their contracts, and Comcast isn't willing to give up the HD tiers yet, for whatever reason it happens to be, but they're writing into these contracts that once one access center in New Hampshire gets the HD channel, they have to provide them with the HD channel as well. So it's actually, I feel like it's creating a bigger bump to get over the more contracts are written this way. So it's just a matter of getting one person or one station over, but they're not really budging. So
Do you really think it will
that's
make a
how it's-
difference with
Why
the
would they?
Oh, yeah.
citizens?
Oh, yeah.
You do.
I do.
What
I don't
difference would
watch-
it make? But what difference would it make if you're watching Channel 20 versus 720?
I think it's just on the scroll.
It's on the scroll.
Yeah,
You
when
don't
you're
go-
Scrolling through channels.
Go through the guide. I don't have to go down to 20.
In fact,
I'm already at 700.
Gotcha.
Can you get
10 years ago, I think that's how a lot of people discovered Merrimack TV, was they would be scrolling through and happen to stumble on a board or committee meeting or something fun and interesting on Channel 22 from our great community
Like fishing.
TV shows, like fishing, Outdoors with Bob,
Young and Younger? I saw it today.
Young and
it's
Younger.
funny. I've had recent chance to watch some other access channels. It's pretty pitiful. That's what happens when you get older. You'll go somewhere else and you go, gee, I wonder what their town council's like. It's so pitiful. But anyway, it really does. We really do a really nice job. Because I'll look at some other public access channels and I'll go, God, just the quality
Absolutely.
is very different. Whether it be the camera angle, I want to say, get closer so I can see them, or they're too close. It's just, everything. That's what happens when you get older, though.
I'm fortunate to have a great staff here. Justin and Chris are probably just as obsessive with me when it comes to how things look on television. And the three of us care very much how our end product looks and sounds.
Really makes a difference. I'm sure it's a combination of good equipment and, that kind of stuff, but also, you're right, the people behind the camera, and the quality is so much better than the one I've seen.
I'm not going to argue
It
with
is,
that.
it's true.
Are they paying you or what?
No.
Be really good in HD.
Oh, no.
You might be good on HD.
As I said, that camera, does it have Photoshop capabilities instantaneously? Yes, Phil.
I just wanted, Nick, you guys have it might just be my laptop, but it's, every once in a while I'll go online to try and pick out a segment of the, of a meeting, and it's difficult to come in clearly, so I didn't know if there was anything that could be done there without any major cost, or if that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's not just in the cameras that we're going to be upgrading here, but it's also our switcher that's in the control room and how we encode meetings now. We're going to change an entire workflow so that it is a higher quality. So right now, the audio is really good. The video isn't it's about standard definition, and so I think you're watching our video clips alongside HD clips, and it doesn't look the same. So that's just in our workflow and some things that we have to change. But right now, we just try to get the meetings on as quickly as possible, and it's at the sacrifice of not having them quite on HD yet, but that will happen come the summer.
You're so funny.
Tom will get his
I
wish.
never
He'll
thought
be in
of it.
HD on the internet come next
Excellent.
July.
I can't wait.
On
And when you get,
Absolutely.
and you get
Count
to,
his freckles.
you can get to
Sure.
be chair that first year in HD. How's that?
No, thank you.
April election. Come on.
Any other question? Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks,
Thank
Jeff.
you very much.
Okay, general government, number 1.
Oh, man.
You're on the floor. You have the next 3. General government, proposed issuance of debt, which is going to be really short, and revenues.
So, thank you. In general government, you will not see any significant changes, no changes in staffing. Health insurance is going up a little bit, like with everybody. And one of the things that you'll see is compensated absences increasing, and sometimes that increases and sometimes it decreases. And it's based on when a person has the ability to retire. So when it's done by, we have to do it in order to satisfy our auditors. So we have to always have on hand the amount of money that a person would be entitled to be paid out when they left. So if somebody hits 60, for instance, they are, some categories of employees are eligible to retire. So even if they don't, we have to hold it. If somebody is able to retire at 45, then, and they don't, we still need to hold it. So this number varies from year to year, and it can be significant, as you see. So the other, moving along, the next one that you see is legal other. We have been spending about close to $100,000. Some of these have been, we had years with a pipeline, then we had years with PFOA and that kind of thing where we're using more attorneys. What we try to do is, what I've tried to do, I guess I would say, is I haven't really used the attorneys in terms of negotiating contracts, except for them to take a look at the language. So they don't come to our negotiations meetings. They come to grievance hearings, and they advise us about things like grievances and those kinds of things. So what I've done in here is to put in an extra $25,000 in the legal budget, and that is in lieu of help with the union contracts. All 5 of them are coming due. We did 5 3 years ago, and it was a bear. So I put in $25,000, not sure that I'm going to spend it, but I would like to have it there because it's a very long process. So anyway, there's an extra $25,000 in there. Consultants, you see, there is $25,000 in here.
That's 8351, right?
Yeah, 8351 consultants. This is actually, Paul put this in here. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to it, but it is specifically for helping to pay for a consultant for kind of what the library is talking about in the future, which is space needs for a combined South Fire Station and police station. That's that $25,000. So the year before was for something else, and this whole $25,000 would be for that public safety building. And is there money somewhere else?
Yeah, and the Fire Capital Reserve has $25,000 as well.
Yeah, so the total budget for that study would be $50,000. Space needs study. And as you recall, it was a very successful project to do it that way with the highway garage, because there's so many different layers to it. How much space do you need? How much space do you have? How many offices do you need? You know, and surprisingly, when we did the highway garage, the highway staff were very conservative with their numbers. They didn't, you know, they were so pleased that anybody was even looking at them for a new building that they said, oh, I just need a little cupboard over here, you know. That's what that's for, and you'll see it in the two places.
Okay, so the total is really 50,000, 25,000 here. And where's the
$25,000 in the fire department, coming
department.
out of the fire department's capital reserve fund. Outside services are the same. The largest of which is the contractual ambulance billing service for $35,000.
What are we talking about? Number?
8359, other outside services on page 21.
Okay, thank you.
And contractual ambulance billing service. You'll also see your revenue for, we hire somebody to be a collection agency for us for our ambulance billing, and surprisingly we've brought in an enormous, I want to say it was $75,000 more this past year, more. So we were bringing in, you know, $550, and now we're bringing in $675 or something like that. When we get to revenues, we can look at that a little bit closer, but even though we've been using it on a regular basis, it's really kind of necessary. But we've been seeing a lot more success with it as of late. Then you have bank service charges, which are basically you net out the interest with this charge. You kind of, it's not a net. We have a gross revenue, and then you have expenses for bank charges because we have to do gross budgeting. The audit, we have an annual audit, in-depth audit, $30,000 a year. And criminal driving checks to $12,000. That's for everyone. So whenever any employee, police, fire, public works, anybody, whatever Sharon needs to do for criminal records and driving check comes through this department. And then, what's that? Oh, okay. All right, so that's pretty much flat. Then, did you need something? Okay, then elections has gone up because there's more elections, so you can get into that, Paul.
In the current year budget, we have
8410.
one election, and we're going to 3 elections. So we're going from 1 to 3. So
for the next year.
For the next year, so
Yeah.
staffing and everything else. That's the rental of the rental of St. James and
St. James?
St. John Newman. Sorry, St. John Newman.
You're going from 1 to 3?
1 election to 3 elections.
Okay, so 3 times the 700 from last year would be 2,100, and you got 2,400. Not that I care about 300, but
They actually went up.
they actually went up.
They went up to $800.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, advertising has gone up a little bit based on the actual that has been spent, instead of, as Diane, trying to move things around and not giving a higher number on this line and a lower number on that line. We're trying to make sure that each one correlates with the budget. So transfers to other funds. These are mostly to capital reserve funds. So $35,000 goes into the computer equipment capital reserve fund. $10,000 goes into a milfoil treatment expendable trust, and $10,000 is actually set aside for property insurance deductible, and that is because we have $1,000 deductible. So if we need to, if we have 10 claims in a particular year, we have $10,000 to cover that.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If you don't use it, does it just build up?
Yeah, it goes into like a capital reserve fund.
So how much do we have in the capital reserve property insurance?
We're almost down to 0.
Because we've used it.
We've been using it.
Okay.
It only covers 10, so
Right.
if a police
So
car...
if there's
if
10
it's-
circumstances.
Yeah, if a police car gets hit, or we hit somebody with a plow truck, it's $1,000 deductible. We hit
Yep,
cars,
mailboxes.
vehicles, mailboxes. All the mailboxes, things of that sort all come out of this fund.
Gotcha. That's true.
The library, the flooding in the children's room, the $1,000 would come out of this.
Gotcha.
We pay for mailboxes
Yes, we do,
through the insurance?
through the insurance.
Well, where it's in, I always thought they had to go to their own insurance company, the homeowner did.
No, if they call and we know that we've hit it, we put up a temporary,
Right.
and then we go back and we give them the standard mailbox. If they have anything that is a special mailbox, granite pole, special.
replace it.
Some people spend ridiculous amount of monies for these mailboxes, just for a mailbox itself. We run it through our insurance company and let them deal with our insurance company for replacement
Yeah.
on that. But since the mailboxes are under $1,000, all those mailboxes we hit, we pay for
Out of that fund.
out of that fund.
Yeah, I didn't know we did that. I didn't know we did it. I thought that they were allowed to put their mailbox in our right of way, and we were held harmless. As a matter of fact, you have to put in certain ones. You can't put in something that can't break off and so on. So I'm just surprised, that's all.
We've been paying for them since I've been here for 14 years, and actually, that's something that if we want to change, we'd have to look at the policy and bring that policy in front of the council to change that policy. But that's always been, what I understood, that's always been the policy of the town. Hit a mailbox, replace the mailbox.
And I think that's fair. I think it's, if we hit a mailbox or 6 in a row, we should replace them.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Well said.
Moving on, we have a telephone upgrade. I'm not sure how old our phone system is, but it's pretty old. And again, it's one of those situations where the phone system, whether by design or just because it's so old, the technology changes to the point where there's no more replacement parts or serviceability of the equipment. But if you want to hear somebody talk intelligently about phones, here's your guy right here.
Our phone system is as old as what I've started working. The week after I started to work for the town, about a little over 13 and a half years
That
ago, it
old,
was
huh?
replaced. It was, it's been 13 and a half years, and some of the functionality that we had when it first started, we no longer have. Because when during upgrades in technology, they've written that part off. So this upgrade will bring us back to some of the functionality, such as paging system, seeing if somebody's on the phone. So for instance, if somebody calls general government and says, I want to speak to the finance director, Instead of them transferring in and then it ringing 5 times and then going to my voicemail, they can say, he's on the phone, would you like his voicemail? We lost that functionality with 3 upgrades ago. So with the new phone
So
system.
you had the capability.
We
but
had the
you lost it.
capability, but we lost it.
So it sounds like an iPhone kind of thing with a battery.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Do you
So
know what I'm
what we're
saying?
looking to do.
I mean, you have the capability, but we're making it obsolete that you have to upgrade.
Yes, and basically, that's where we're at.
That's
The
ridiculous.
servers are older, some of the switches for the telephone throughout the building, the switches are at their end of life. So this is all part of the upgrade with the telephones, the capabilities. And when you're talking about this telephone upgrade for $72,000, it's not just the phones in this building, it's the fire station, it's wastewater, it's the highway garage.
Everywhere.
It's the police department. All those phones are all tied into this system, so it's a number of phones for this upgrade. No, the library is on their own. So, but it's
They
a
want
number
to
of
have their own
phones.
health insurance, they can get their own phone.
Yeah.
I understand. They get, you talk about built-in obsolescence, so. Okay, go ahead. Anything else? Questions? Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Eileen. Apologies. Page 17, under wages, 8104. Did we ever hire the technology assistant to assist the technology coordinator?
Yes, we did.
And that person's currently,
His name is Tim Hutchinson, and he
Okay.
works for Chuck.
okay, perfect.
Full-time, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Finley?
Actually, it's nothing really, but I was just wondering why on 8104 and excess 6 leave, you went to decimal places on that. I wanted to make sure you didn't forget a 0 at the end or something, and that it was only $3,000.
It's only 3,000.
Okay.
It's a format.
Fortunately, it's not 36,000. Is that what you were? Whoa.
I put that there to make sure people look at the budget, and you caught it,
You were
Finley.
just trying to
I did-
catch.
The reason I caught it
Who
is
was
you
paying
mentioned
attention?
that item earlier, and it just, I'm going, wait a minute, $30,000?
Eileen?
I'm never really sure when I should bring this topic up. I sent something around to each of you about I never include any non-union raises in the budget because I don't want to be presumptuous. So and all the union raises are in there because they're in contract. So it's usually at this time or when you start to deliberate that I start talking about it and what my recommendation would be. So one of the things that, I'll just mention it for now for you to think about. One of the things that I've asked Sharon to do was to take a look at the wages, particularly of the department heads, to see where we are in comparison to other communities. And we're, in most cases, slipping behind. So, for instance, the police chief, when we were looking for, comparable salaries, the wages for police chiefs in comparable communities were about $120,000, and we could only offer her $100,000. So, and I'm not saying that we have to be just like everybody else, but so what Sharon did for me, the HR person, she called all these different communities and she looked to see where she basically picked the middle of their range, so that she could, and then averaged them out to see what the average of all of them would be for each of these positions. Then then she added a 3% increase for everyone, and you see here where our people fall in terms of wages in comparison. So basically, still everybody except for Paul and one other guy who's at $202 over at 3% is under, quite a bit under what other communities are. So, and the reason why Paul's is slightly over is because none of these other positions had, do you want copies? Because I brought hard copies. Would you like them? Okay. Does anybody have any?
Did you? I don't have.
Okay.
Did you send that?
I did.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
Today.
It was sent, it was sent at 2:29.
Okay.
Just
There's those.
Generally.
Approximately. So here's.
You got yours earlier.
So there's two things that you have, there's the whole, you'll see one with a staple on it, but the detail is behind on each of the positions, but the front page of it shows a summary. And as I was saying, as far as Paul is concerned, none of those other positions included the title of assistant town manager. So there really were no apples to apples. And same with many of the clerical positions. It was very difficult to find somebody who might be an assessing clerk or somebody who might, because they do all kinds of things. So somebody might be only work for the tax collector or only work for the city clerk, town clerk, rather than a person that does both. So it was difficult to find some of those. And then, so after that, what I asked Paul to do was to determine how much it would cost in total with all benefits for a 2% raise and for a 3% raise for the non-union staff. I'm recommending a 3% raise. The increase would be $111,000 or 3 cents on the tax rate, and it's not included in my budget.
Okay, we'll have time to look at this. I'm sure we'll have questions come Monday. Does anybody have any immediate questions? No? Or yes?
So,
Apparently it's a yes.
yeah, it always is a yes, Madam Chair. So we're looking at basically it's senior management that you're asking, am I understanding?
I'm showing you senior management, but as I said, it's difficult to get the support staff, some of the support staff to match apples to apples, but I'm asking for 3% for all the non-union.
And when was the last time they got an increase in salary?
Last year.
And what was the percentage of salary raise that we get?
2%.
So 2% last year, and you're proposing 3%, so we're looking at 5% over the last 2 years, potentially.
Yeah.
And prior to last year, when was the last raise that we gave the
It
non-union?
was the year before. I believe it was 5%. And
So 2015, 5%, 2016, 2%, 2007, I'm sorry, I got my years messed
I
up.
don't know.
2016, 5%,
16, 17, 5.
17, 18, 2, 18, 19, 3. So 10% over 3 years, potentially.
Yes, and one of the reasons why is because the unions all got a total of 9%, but that doesn't include their steps. So the non-union people get no steps. And the union people, especially if they just started, get steps every year. So they get a cost of living and then they get steps. So that's why the non-union fall out of line, because they don't get steps.
And as you know this, we have 7 unions in town?
We have 6.
6.
6 and the non-union, so, yeah. 6 contracts.
And what was the last year of the contracts raise?
I'm sorry.
The union contracts. The
This
last
year.
was.
This year is the last year of the
And
union
their raise
contracts.
was?
3%. And then the police have 1 more year, and there's the following year after this is 2% they're getting in their
Right.
final year of the police contract.
So you're giving us this information just for information, not for any intentions.
That is my intention, to make that recommendation, but
But I mean, the percentage of, is
Yes.
right.
Yes.
Not having to do with the individual positions.
Right.
Changes.
Exactly. What I'm trying to do is, I'm just trying to show you that, you know, we have looked at it from a perspective of, you know, the marketplace for those particular positions in similar sized or similar type towns, so that you can see that you're not, by giving 3%, you're not overpaying
Gotcha.
people.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
Prior to 16, 17, when was the last increase for the non-unions?
Yeah, we
That's
got
right.
$1,500 to change
$1,500.
the health insurance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and
And
then
that was when?
the year before,
15,
the
16?
5%. Yeah. And I think the year before that was 0.
Peter?
So, Eileen, as I'm looking at this page 1 chart, the second column is what you're proposing with the salary increases? That's the 3%?
Yes.
Okay.
So the first column, or the first column of numbers, is what the actual salary of the position is in Merrimack. And then the second column is the, as you said, the actual salary only for with the 3%. And then it shows the average of the other sample towns without Merrimack, and then the difference between Merrimack actual plus the average after 3%. So what it is, it's, wait a minute. So it's column 2 minus column 3, or vice versa. So column 3 minus column 2 equals the difference.
That's
Yeah.
the difference between, right.
So if you looked at this first position, which we won't name, the person is making $95,992. If that person got a 3% raise, it would be $98,872. The average of communities is $103,011. So this person would still be making $4,139 less than the average. Okay.
You get it? Any other questions? Okay, can we go on to proposed issuance of debt?
There is none.
That was quick. Next, revenues. And that's the last tab, just to let everybody know. Oh, maybe in yours, but isn't that the last one? Last one, tab is revenue. I'm not sure where it is digitally.
This one says revenue in the very beginning.
If you're electronics at the beginning, if you're in the
They're trying to trick us. They're having us work against each other, Thomas.
You want this one? You want this one? Or you find it? Okay, all right. So, what is different, a little bit different about the revenues than had been done before, is that there are the two front pages are a summary. So we don't have $5 for this and $3 for that and that kind of thing. We tried to combine things together to put in like type of revenues together. If you want to look at them in detail, those are under, you have the first 2 pages, and beyond that is the detail on your revenues. So what you will see, current use, there aren't a lot of changes here in revenues being proposed, except for auto registrations, which we've increased by about $300,000. And that is still trending the same way.
Amazing.
It is
3220.
the big, when you see the big, huge number, 4.9 million.
Revenue two? That's the one she's talking about, I know. So it's revenue two, Finley?
Yeah,
Okay, so what we had been budgeting last year, and we thought we were being kind of extravagant because the year before we brought in $4.8 million. We moved it up to 4.9 million last year, but as you can see, in 16-17 we brought in 5.133 million, and it's still trending that way this year. So that we feel that we can safely put in a number of $5.2 million for an estimate of motor vehicle revenues.
Bless you.
Some of the other things you'll see are that look a little might look a little strange to you, especially you two new counselors, is when some of these federal grants are not here. So they'll, like on line 3311, federal grants, bridges and sidewalks. That was a big grant that we got the 1 year, and we're not getting it this year, but we're also not making the expense. So, and then you can see that the state bridge program, for several years, we were bringing in a boatload of money on the state, which is the 80% of various projects. If we don't have a project going, obviously we don't get that money. So, so you can see ambulance revenue has been going up pretty steadily over the past few years, and it may even be possible to move that up a little bit if Paul feels comfortable with it. Also, interest in pooled cash, again, that may, depending on how the interest rates are going, it may be possible to increase that a bit also, because we've increased it by $25,000, and again, that is line 3502. And that's interest on cash that we have on hand, including fund balance. Transfer to capital reserve funds, you see that's revenue in and revenue out. So that's a matching number. You'll see this is revenue, and then you'll see an exact amount expended.
Now, that's the amount of money that we're going to be spending for purchasing various things.
That's right.
Okay.
And
From the capital reserve.
All the capital reserve funds, yes. And then the road improvement fund, this is the amount of money that we get with the $5 registration fees. So that's pretty consistently been around $125,000. And when we add it to the money that we're going to spend for roads, I believe that's $850 now, $850,000, Paul. Okay. So tax overlay, that is, as you know, a number that we set aside for abatements in case anybody is entitled to an abatement. Now, this is a number that you should take a look at. Paul and I did not want to take the liberty of using another $450,000 as you chose to do last year to reduce the fund balance. We just simply put a number in of $300,000, which you had done the year before. So if you were going to do what you kind of indicated that you were going to do last year, you would raise that up to $450,000 to reduce the fund balance. And that was, as I said, that was stated out there that you wanted to do that consistently over a period of time. But with new counselors and that type of thing, we don't want to make assumptions. We're asking you what you want to do. So, if you were to, $150,000 is 35 cents. 5 cents.
I was gonna say 35.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be, yeah, do it. Okay, so, so the first page is the general fund. And the second page is the wastewater fund, which, as we know, is a
Just give and take.
self-supporting fund. And then you have the media, which is a self-supporting fund,
Yeah.
fire protection district, which is the cost of water for the fire hydrants
Yes, out in that district.
in that district. And then the other self-supporting funds themselves, traffic details for the police, fire details for the fire department, day camp registrations. Those aren't in here anymore, as you recall. Those are now in the revolving account. Trust fund interest, library, and the highway garage was in
The
there
good old
before.
bond.
The what's that?
The bond I'm looking at.
Yeah, that was the old bond. And that is pretty much it. So if you want to look at it in greater detail, to see how we've combined all of these summary items by $5 and $8, they're all there too.
That's the other revenue tab?
Yes, that's the other revenue too.
Yes.
The detail is detail.
Great detail.
Detail is revenue. Revenue 2 is the summary.
Thank you.
Okay, questions for Eileen regarding revenues? Okay, I'm going to, before we call it a night, I usually summarize this meeting by making sure we all understand that January 29th is the final deliberations. That's where we come in with a whole bunch of suggestions about how we want to revise any of these things. All the department heads will be here, I believe.
Yes, I always tell them if they're not here,
Who knows?
who knows what'll happen.
What I would like to suggest, which I do every year, is if you have things that you are considering, I suggest you talk to Eileen so that she has the figures and stuff for you. So when it comes to Monday evening, they'll come prepared to give you to give everybody the information. Okay? So I would recommend everyone, or if there's any questions about it, just give her a call and say, "This is what I'm thinking. Can you have that information ready for us?" Okay? Is there any other questions? It's like we're all overwhelmed at this point. No further, Eileen?
And if you want a handy dandy trick on how to calculate what a dollar amount would be on the tax rate, is you take the number that you want, let's say it's $20,000 or whatever, and you divide it by $3,382,236.
That's why we have Paul here.
No, that's
What will
why you have
happen is
me
just
here.
for the
This
new
is what I
people-
like to do. I'm the dork.
What the new people
I'm
will
worse than him.
know is that when you come in and say you want to be able to decrease something by $30,000, Paul will calculate and say, okay, now that has an impact
Can I do
on
it?
the
Will you let me do
total,
it?
the total budget and how much it will impact the tax rate. So we know as we're going on.
So what was, I don't need to the.
Every $33,000 is approximately 1 penny.
So 3 million, yeah, okay.
Almost $3.4 billion in value now.
That's a big increase from a few years ago.
It's a lot. We were at, probably 3 years ago, we were at 2.8 billion, and now we're at almost 3.4 billion.
How much is it that inflation and how much is new construction?
I don't have that, but I will, it's a very good question, and I'll be happy to get that for you.
I bet a lot of it's build-up, don't you think, in the
I
town?
would think that,
I think it's a little bit of both,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
A couple of years ago,
It has
property values
increased.
were down.
values have increased.
And maybe 3 years ago, when we did our last reval, people's values
That's
were
right,
going
they were
down,
turning,
and
yeah,
it was
and
and the tax rate was up, and
That's right.
and then we've had a lot of new value, and As I said to you before, the value of the mall's gone up 75 million.
Yeah, that's,
And we'll have subsequent increase in tax rate as a result? Submission is what I'm saying.
Don't get it. I don't get it.
If your value's gone up, does the amount of taxes you pay go up?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
From the mall.
Yeah.
But that 75 million is included in 3.3 million, 3.34 billion.
Right. I understand. But I think when you say that increased value, that also translates into more
But
taxes.
across the board, it might not be the exact impact because it went up because other people have gone up or down or whatever, and those all together.
And we always have to think about, I know it came up in one of the planning was, that when the tax rate, let's say it goes up a significant, 70% of that goes to the school. Doesn't come to the town. So we can say all that is accurate, there's a certain amount of revenue, increased revenue in terms of taxes, but we have to remember the distribution. Okay, I will entertain a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn. Motion made by Bill Boyd, second by.
Second.
It's like one of the two of the new guys that do it all the seconds. Second by Tom Thornton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those none opposed, I don't think. And it moves. We are in adjournment, and I'll see you Thursday. Regular town council.